Are you ready for another line and wash? Strike that, reverse it, wash and line, huh? Hello all you minders out there. Welcome back to another Mind of Watercolor. Gonna do another sort of Inktober feature today. This will probably be my last Inktober YouTube video for Inktober. And it's really probably more watercolor than it is ink, but I get a lot of requests from you folks out there to do more line and wash, or to do line and wash, or how to do line and wash. And I think Inktober is a great time of the year to kind of focus on that. I'll probably be doing some more pen and ink drawings, but you won't see that except on Instagram and my Facebook page. So if you're following me there, you may see a couple more of those before the month is out. But my most requested type video are the spontaneous paintings, and I probably get more views on those than any other kind. And I really enjoy doing them. I have a formula sort of for doing them, and that's probably why that kind of enthusiasm shows through. But anyway, I know you guys like it, so I thought, wouldn't it be cool to combine the two? Now, pen and ink doesn't seem like a real spontaneous medium, and in a lot of ways it's not. Yeah, you can be loose with it, but it's very unforgiving, probably more so than watercolor. And how would we do a spontaneous line and wash, or in this case, wash and line? There's the clue. Well, you do the painting first, the spontaneous part of the painting first, the washes. If you've seen any of my spontaneous paintings, you know my formula is throw down some color. You know, I kind of try to get it in the zones of a landscape, you know, with a tree and some ground, but I don't generally plan it too much other than that. And I throw paint in there and mingle it, see what it'll do. And then as shapes start to emerge, I kind of model them. Well, I'm going to do that again today, but then instead of tightening and modeling and detailing everything in paint, I'm going to do that in ink, and then probably come back with a final pass of watercolor to bring all the contrast and all the elements together. So we'll see how this goes. I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to be fun. Let's do it. But first, everybody give it up for my studio assistant, Reese. Hey buddy, how are you today? You like to be spontaneous too? Oh, okay. Well, what do you do that's spontaneous? You spent a whole day learning how to whistle through your teeth. Okay. How did that work out for you? No, imagine it didn't. Alright, so what I decided to do this project on is this Hahnemühle Cezanne hot press. This is a hot press, 140 pound hot press watercolor block, and it's really nice. I think it's going to be great for ink. It's got very smooth surface. I would say smoother even than like an Arch 140 pound hot press. It's almost like Bristol. So we're going to see how this works. And as I explained before, I'm going to work in reverse. This is going to be spontaneous, but I'm going to throw down some washes and see what develops, and then I'm going to ink on top of that. I think I'm going to stay down here in this range. I want to keep it kind of fall-like. I may throw in a couple greens and some blues, but for the most part I'm going to use fall colors, and I will have a list of those colors down below. This is my M-gram palette, and my main M-gram palette that I use, and I will also list what was in this painting, but I'll also list the entire palette for you. Now I'm just going to start out with a very golden. I want this to be very kind of golden, and I'm not going to pre-wet the background. A lot of times I'll pre-wet, so I'll get a lot of wet and wet. A lot of my spontaneous paintings I like to make vignettes, so some hard edges are going to be fine. So I'm just going to do some brush work, and I'm going to start out with nickel quinacridone gold to give it an overall golden tone. And I think probably for this to work, most of the colors are going to have to stay fairly light. So I will probably do some spraying here. So again, just don't know what's going to come, but we're going to splash in paint and see what happens. Be a landscape, obviously. I think those are the easiest to do as spontaneous. The reason I'm spraying is to create some runs, but also to let these edge colors kind of feather out into these little kind of leafy shapes. And I've got to remind myself here to keep this light so I can do ink work on top of it. Normally my spontaneous painting process is to throw down these washes, get an initial base of washes and see what shapes present themselves, and then I'll go back in and do some negative painting, contrast adjusting, a little lifting and highlighting until I get something that kind of emerges and takes shape. Well, this time I'm going to do that with ink instead of with paint, although I may do a little bit of that with paint. You'll see what I'm talking about as it goes, but I'm going to keep it very light. I'm going to switch to some orange iron oxide. It's like red iron oxide, only oranger. Dab in some Prussian blue here, just for depth in places. I really don't think I'm going to need a lot of paint. You can see I've done not a whole lot of brushing, not a whole lot of paint applying. Now what I'm doing is dabbing in some Indian yellow. This is going to be very golden yellow, obviously. So maybe some tree shapes are going to form up here. All these drips and runs and things, I'm just going to let them happen. Maybe I'll pull some of them this way. This is the fun of spontaneous painting. Let me get some nickel azo yellow in here, which is kind of a green gold. You can see what the spray spatters are doing, painting those trees for me. This is kind of a Bob Ross approach to watercolor, I guess. If you ever watched this show, you'll know how much he always talked about not spending hours painting all the little bushes, but he had those brushes that he just kind of dabbed and they magically seemed to like make the bushes. That's kind of the version of this. Let's get some red in here just for the fun of it. Maybe a line of it going that way. And get some things that might be shadow masses at the base of these land things. Landy things. The little landy shapes. It's coming out kind of gray brown because I mixed some green and some red. Oh, that's looking really cool. I'm getting some interesting shapes there. Watercolor, you amaze me so much. I love partnering with you, letting you do the work. I really do. Look at this. Look at how these runs have come down and they have negatively painted kind of a little bush shape right here, almost automatically. And here, just automatically did its own negative painting, and that's because this was drier than this, and this kind of just stopped. That's what's exciting about these spontaneous little things, is you get these things to happen, and man, oh man. Alright, I am really loving what I'm seeing here, and this is going to dry. I'm going to let this dry. And I'll probably go right to ink, so I can define things and shapes and whatnot, and then I'll probably go back and another layer of paint. Alright, so I'm going to start the process of inking. I'm using Sepia Pigmamicron. It goes well with these colors, and I'm just going to start picking out shapes, and I like to go gradually. The task is not to just hardly outline everything. I do almost start with sort of dotted lines, and I say, okay, that's going to be a bush, and that's going to be one, and I'm looking for little areas of contrast and shape, ground shapes. Various ones will probably become more defined later. You can find little areas of color to surround with the line, or you can use line to add sort of a basey shadow to areas. There's all kind of things you can do. And the drawing is really no different than if I were doing a pen and ink drawing first. Just using some of the color and shapes to guide where those lines go. But the techniques, the drawing techniques, are going to be similar to the way I would normally do them if I was doing a pen and ink. I also have a sepia brush pen. You know, if I want to add little dark areas, I usually save this to last, but I want to go back and add any little sepia pops of contrast. I can easily do that with this Pigma Micron brush, or Sakura Pigma brush.
I've told my mother, I've told my friend, but I can't bring myself to tell you what I found. We built a palace on stolen ground, but now I cannot seem at all to find my sound. My harmonies are broken, it's like I lost my wings. My heart is only playing on a single string. I gambled every token, I thought that we could win, but still my heart is playing on a single string. We had a mission, we had a plan, but tiny changes can be hard to understand. My harmonies are broken, it's like I lost my wings. My heart is only playing on a single string. I gambled every token, I thought that we could win, but still my heart is playing on a single string. A single string. And I wished upon the stars, but suddenly I heard you sing. My harmonies are broken, it's like I lost my wings. My heart is only playing on a single string. I gambled every token, I thought that we could win, but still my heart is playing on a single string. My harmonies are broken, it's like I lost my wings. My heart is only playing on a single string. I gambled every token, I thought that we could win, but still my heart is playing on a single string. But still my heart is playing on a single string.
I'm developing a fairly good center of interest here in the composition, so I'm going to develop that further with detail and probably let detail towards the outside go a little light. Okay, so I'm pulling out my sepia brush pen here. I'm just going to pop in some low lights, some heavy line in places, just maybe the underneaths of different things to give it some pop.
I gambled every token, I thought that we could win, but still my heart is playing on a single string. single string.
Okay, I've got a good bit of the line established. I go back and touch up some more. But what I'm going to do now is get a little more paint involved now that I know where my shapes are, my contrast is, and see what I can do there. I'm going to add a little bit of variegation to some of the foliage, and actually what I want to do first is negative paint a little orange iron oxide and some Prussian blue. Gives me a greeny brown, and I'm just going to negative paint around that. And I'll follow some of these shapes that I've already pinned in. Let's bring that negative painting all the way down there. Excuse my sniffles, I have a cold. And while I have this kind of a green-brown color, just kind of dab in other places to accentuate some shadows. And some contrast. Just going to add a little variation to these clumps of foliage. Just add a little, some darker leaves towards the bottom. Just avoid them looking too cut out. So I'm going to paint, do a little negative painting here around these rocks. I'm not going to concern myself, as I said before, with too much detail out here. Just going to let that kind of blend out to sort of nebulous shapes and whatnot. Get a little more golden color here. Green gold. This has been a really nice surface to work on. This Hanamula hot press. It's taken the ink just super well. And it paints just fine. 100% cotton. Let's say 140 pounds. Alright, so here's what I think I'm going to do too, is I'm going to grab my scrubber, pick up some highlights in places. Maybe on some bush clumps here. Get a little more separation. Paper scrubs out really well. That's nice. Alright, so at this point I'm mainly just fiddling with it because there's so much of that golden yellow color. I'm just adding some glazes, in this case orange, just to vary the color of some of these trees a little. I've also been going through with my smaller scrubber and just pulling out little appropriate highlights in some small areas. And I think it's pretty well taken shape. I don't know that I want to do much more. It has the ink and wash look, which is what I wanted to do. Yeah, I like the orange. That just adds a little foliage color variety here and there. Alright, so maybe you guys want to try that and just get out your paints and do a little spontaneous painting, and then take some pen and ink and see what you can do with it afterwards. This was really fun. I'm loving this Hanamulla hot press surface. Just a really nice flat smooth surface to paint and ink on. But really any hot press paper that you have is probably fine. Thanks everyone for watching. Thanks for liking and subscribing. Thank you so much, patrons, for supporting me and sponsoring these episodes. Your numbers are growing. A lot of Minder patrons out there, and I am so grateful to you. We'll see everybody in the next video.